Yo, what's up boys? It's Betta-ah here with my poor man's Herald of Agony Guardian. That's an early budget life version before going Chaos Inoculation with an Aegis Aurora shield. It takes on T16 mapping and early Guardians rather comfortably with a decent amount of damage and defense, so you can gather more currency to later on switch down the line. In this video I will be covering the basics of the build, the life setup, and the leveling process, when to transition the build smoothly while getting familiar with the build's playstyle early on to this very setup that you can see right now. There's also going to be another 3 videos that will follow, with the CR transition being the very next video on about a 3 divine budget roughly, and then a endgame one whereby you'll expect to spend about 10 maybe 15 divines. It depends how things get put together. And then obviously for the very last video that I will be doing will be the super juiced version of Herald of Agony Guardian with about 50 divines for uber bossing, and some awesome tech will be included to do wave 30 simulacrums on easy mode, should I be saying. Right, so just jumping on in game here real quick, just so I can go over how the build exactly works. And how the build works is that with your Agony Crawler, you need to stack up poisons, and for each time you poison an enemy, you'll gain a virulence charge. Now each virulence charge gives 5% attack speed, 10% increased physical damage as you can see, and a huge amount of flat added physical damage as well to the Agony Crawler, and enable to scale the amount of damage that we gain from each virulence charge. We also increase the maximum level of the Agony Crawler itself, so we can gain more out of the virulence charges. And now our total amount of virulence charges is currently only 40. However, once going into the CR transition and so forth, you can expect to have about 60 and about a level 30 Herald of Agony, so the Agony Crawler will dish out a massive amount of damage. And in order to apply these poisons, I'm making use of Stormbrand with faster casting and chance to poison, and then also a Ball Lightning. This is to enable us to be able to apply a lot of virulences really quickly, so we can keep those stacks as high as possible, so the Agony Crawler is dealing as much damage as possible. And then also with the build, we also achieve somewhat decent amount of fizz damage reduction, maximum resistances, maximum chaos resistance as well, and obviously we are basically block capped with attack damage and almost block capped with spell damage too, just to make the build even more tanky. And then I'm also making use of Outreach Battery over here, mainly just for mana costs and that, but also because I'm using Mind Over Matter. So 40% of all damage that we do take that is not blocked is taken from our energy shield and mana before our life, and this just helps the overall survivability of the build by a really large margin. And then I'm also taking advantage of an Arakali's Fang for the race spiders, mostly for clear speed, but in actual fact what I'm really using them for is to proc Feeding Frenzy and Withering Touch, so enemies can take even more damage. I guess you can say that they are more of a support than anything else, but they really do help to clear maps pretty quickly. You can use melee splash instead of multi-strike. However, I found that using multi-strike is a lot more beneficial. In order to summon your spiders, what you will need to do is use Desecrate about 2 or 3 times on yourself. Typically, I will always just put it on myself, and then I'll put a Stormbrand on each side of me and then behind me, typically. And then you just hit your Wrathing Jar, and then the Stormbrands will automatically kill the 2 worms that come out of the Wrathing Jar, and then they consume the corpses around you in order to summon the spiders. Okay, now just to quickly go over the Ascendancy. We are of course the Guardian with the Old Man No Pants. First of all, you'll pick up Radiant Crusade for a lot of elemental resistances very early on through the acts. This is very beneficial, but more so for the allies have got Onslaught and deal 10% more damage. Then going over to Cruel Lab, we pick up Unwavering Crusade for the increased attack and movement speed and area of effect, making our clear speed just a little bit quicker. This is also very, very good with using melee splash, as it does increase the area of effect with melee splash with our spiders. And then obviously enemies are intimidated and unnerved, meaning that they take increased attack and spell damage. And then for the third lab, I opted to go for Bastion of Hope. You can also go Time of Need, but Bastion of Hope is really, really good for the extra chance to block attacks. And also more so for each time that I use a spell, you will gain extra spell blocks. So as you can see, we're on 62%. I use a spell, bumps us up by 10%, and that just helps to cap block a little bit easier. Time of Need gives the reduced effect of curses on you, which is really, really good for mapping. And then every 4 seconds, you regenerate 30% of your life. This is for increased sustain, which goes hand in hand with Outreach Battery. In terms of the skill tree, you will start leveling off by picking up the early nodes over here for minion and physical damage, along with some dexterity, attack speed, and life as well. But early on, you will rush to get Spiritual Command for the increased attack and cost speed for yourself. And from thereafter, you will go for the Purity of Flesh for more life and that. Then pick up some Reservation Efficiency for when you switch to Herald of Agony. And then we go ahead and we pick up Redemption and Righteous Army, which is very, very potent with Spiritual Aid. So all increases to minion damage also apply to us, meaning we are able to get somewhat of a benefit out of gaining extra damage and not just the minions. And then from there on, later on, you will pick up Enduring Bond and that just for the increased skill effect duration, which is really, really good with the spiders. And then we just pick up some life all over the tree pretty much, and over here with Tireless as well, just some more life too. And then the block nodes, I'll pretty much pick up all of the block nodes to get as much spell block as possible early on, and life as well, and some damage recoup too. This is very, very good with Mind Over Matter, as when we do end up running out of energy shield, for when we're getting hit hard and that, and we do take somewhat like huge blows, did I say, then this recoup is very, very good, and it goes really, really well with our life gain on block, but I'll get to that under the gearing section. And then of course we go for the influence and the reduced mana reservation efficiency nodes here. And also very importantly here, we pick up the chance to poison enemies with spell damage. So that means that we don't just have a 40% chance to poison enemies on hit. Instead, we have got a 65% chance in total. So we can rack up those virulent stacks very, very quickly without struggling to keep them above 30 or so. And obviously, Presage here for the Herald mana reservation efficiency is very, very good. And then obviously we are using Ruin Binder, so then we can have an additional brand attached to an enemy once again, just to improve the rate that we're able to apply poisons on enemies for those virulent stacks. Very, very important early on. Moving on over to the gearing, just real quick over here. Of course, it's the Oracali's Fang for the raised spiders on kill. And then for my helmet, I've got a decent amount of energy shield on it with some chaos resistance and lightning res and life. Nothing special here. With the shield, I'm running a life gain on block. Obviously, you don't need a fractured one. I just had one laying around and I threw a random essence on it, and this is pretty much what came out of it. You'll pretty much want to look for just life and some more resistances, just to ensure that you can resistance capped. Being over capped is also fantastic, but it's not necessary as we have got the reduced effect of curses on us, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And then for the boots is once again energy shield boots with 30% movement speed, very important, so you can be a speedy boy. A little bit of resistance, some extra life there, nothing special there either. And then I'm just running the Belt of the Deceiver. I've been running this since level 20. The only reason why I still have it equipped right now is for the reduced extra damage that you take from critical strikes. Otherwise, the health is a small little bonus, along with the elemental resistances as well. Nearby enemies are intimidated, doesn't matter, as we already get that from the Ascendancy. And then on my gloves, again, is a energy shield base for energy shield for the Outreach Battery. And I've got some dexterity, as the bold requires a lot of dexterity for Herald of Agony. And then a little bit of resistances, and no laugh, unfortunately. I mean, you can get a pair with laugh as well, but I don't think it's really necessary. And then moving on to probably the most two important pieces of gear right now, which is the Circles of Nostalgia with the Herald of Agony has got 38% increased mana reservation efficiency. This varies from 30 to 40%. Obviously, you'll want two of them with as high rolls as possible. I believe I picked these up for 5 chaos each, and as a bonus here, while you are affected by the Herald of Agony, you gain increased chaos resistance. This is very, very valuable early on for capping your chaos resistance prior to going CR, so you don't actually have to worry about dealing with chaos resistance. And then obviously it does give us some extra chaos raise too, and some attributes, which is very, very valuable to the build. And then for the amulet, I'm just using a anvil here for the chance to block attack damage and the armor, but more so for the life gained when you block. This is very, very good with the shield. And I am also using the block mastery for another 20 life gained on block. I guess we can call it 163 life gained each time you block. This also counts for spell damage blocks too, which is really, really good, just for the extra sustain. And then the second most important thing over here for the build is a Skin of the Lords. You can use a Tabula Rasa, however I find that this is very, very good early on for the 2 level of socketed gems. Obviously all of your gems do have to be corrupted, just do note that. So what this chest piece does is obviously the socketed level of gems is really, really good for us, and the 100% increased global defenses. And then I do just want to note here real quick that there's 3 different keystones that you can get. I decided to go with Unwavering Stance, so you cannot be stunned early on. And the reason why I chose this is so that I can use the Soul of Lunaris for the extra physical damage reduction instead of wasting on the Soul of the Brine King. And obviously Soul of Ralakesh I'm using in hand with this for the reduced physical damage over time taken from bleeds. Quickly to run over the skill gems. In the dagger I'm running multi-strike, obviously the Withering Touch for the withered on hit. When at 15 withered stacks on an enemy, they take 90% increased chaos damage. This gives a massive boost to the overall damage, and then obviously Feeding Frenzy for the 10% more damage that it provides our Agony Crawler and our Spiders with, and the increased attack speed too. And then over here in my helmet, I'm just running a Molten Shell, linked to cast when damage taken, just for a little bit of extra mitigation, and a Despair Curse, giving enemies negative chaos resistance. Very, very good for bossing, just to make it a little bit quicker. And then in the shield, I'm just running Desecrate, obviously, and our Determination Aura for the huge boost in armor. And then Flesh Offering for the increased attack speed to our minions, making them even more speedy. And then a Flame Dash, just for utility, basically, just to get around here and there. And a Tempest Shield for the huge amount of extra spell block and the immunity to shock that it provides us with. And the Convocation, this is very, very good to prevent your Agony Crawler from getting stuck on like corners and stuff, and also the spiders as well, just to keep them nearby. It makes it a lot smoother. And then of course in the gloves is the Storm Brand with fast casting, chance to poison, and our Ball Lightning, just to apply those poisons really quickly. I do just want to note as well that I use the Ball Lightning only for bossing. While mapping, you can just throw the Storm Brands pretty much randomly on the packs of enemies, and you don't not have to worry about keeping those virulences up. And then for the Herald of Agony, I'm using Void Manipulation for more chaos damage, Vicious Projectiles for, once again, more physical damage that it gives, and then minion damage for more minion damage, of course, and a Empower to further boost the levels of Herald of Agony. This is very, very powerful early on, and it is pretty cheap at the moment. I think I got this Empower for 45 chaos. They might be going up in price or going down, not too sure right now. And then a PS, just to make sure that their projectiles are piercing enemies while mapping, just to make it a little bit quicker. Alright, lastly, I just want to quickly run through the 4 path of buildings that I have for leveling the build. Well, 3 for leveling and then 1 for the actual life setup. So between Act 1 and 4, you will be running with splitting steel early on, and obviously you'll be using Herald of Agony from Act 2 or so with Herald of Purity, which goes hand in hand with the Ascendancy, whereby we need at least 4 nearby allies in order to have Onslaught. And then I'll just use a steel skin for a little bit of mitigation and so forth. Underneath the items is just a limb split, a gold rim, a tabula rasa, the flesh and spirit over here for rampage, just to make the acts a little bit quicker until Act 4. And then obviously Wanderlust for the freeze immunity, career reward for the projectile speed and for movement speed, the hoop of ore for the ore resistances and attributes, and the praxis to reduce mana cost of skills early on, and then the belt of deceiver obviously. I've also got the leveling trees here for each act for you. And then once you are into early Act 4, I highly recommend that you should have a look at the lab switch. Over here, I'll make use of a Bright Beak just to leap slam around really quickly, and a Centauri's Answer giving extra spell block early on, but more so for the cursing of enemies when you block with punishment, temporal chains, and LE weakness. And then I'm also using the Skin of the Lords. This can be used from the very early acts. However, I only suggest that you should start using it from when you do switch to Herald of Agony itself, along with the Rampage once again, and 2 hoops of all this time around for the attributes and all LE res. Then for the skills, obviously, we will then, instead of using Splitting Steel, you'll switch over to use Herald of Agony instead now. Over here, you'll run Damage on Full Life, Summon Phantasm, Pierce, Vicious Projectiles, and Void Manipulation. This makes the acts very simple and very easy to get through. And then a Carrion Golem with Culling Strike, Minion Speed, and Maim, just for extra damage and just to cull enemies that are on low life, well, on 10% life or lower. And then a Molten Shell 2, just for a little bit of mitigation and extra armor when it is up. And the Herald of Purity with Feeding Frenzy, obviously to give the extra attack damage and speed to all of our minions. Right, for the third path of building that I have set up for you guys is for when you do your Merciless Lab before killing Act 10 Kitava. This is the ideal setup to have. Well, at about level 46 is when I switched to use a Replica Advancing Fortress for the extra attack block that it gives, and then I also started to use the Anvil from 45 as well for, once again, the attack block and extra armor and the life gain when you block, just for some extra sustain. And then of course I switched to using 2 circles of nostalgia over here. The reason why I switched to using them, wait, these are the wrong ones. Okay, so you shouldn't look to get ones with the increased damage. This is when I was still testing, my bad. You should look to get ones with the reservation efficiency and the chaos resistance. Sorry about that. And then the reason why we go with those rings is because I started to use determination for extra armor, just so that when you get into mapping, it just makes things a lot easier. And then moving over to the actual setup, which is the live setup, as you guys did see. Underneath the notes, I've got the gearing priority, which you should follow, along with trade links as well, just to make things a little bit easier on you. Right, so that's it for the live setup, boys. The very next video will be the CR transition, as I have mentioned in the beginning of the video. Drop a subscribe, maybe a like on the video as well. I will highly appreciate it, boys. And yeah, thanks for watching, Exiles, and I'll see you in the next video, or live stream perhaps.